Grand Hall of the space station Concordia was the most beautiful place Kim Tae-woo had ever seen. Crystal chandeliers floated in the air without any wires. The walls showed moving images of galaxies and distant stars. Tables made of shining white stone filled the room, and at each table sat beings from different worlds. Tae-woo stood near the entrance with his tablet in his hands. He was a junior translator for the Earth delegation. This was his first time at the Galactic Unity Summit, and he still could not believe he was here. Just 3 years ago, he was a lonely student in Busan, working 2 jobs to pay for school. Now he stood among aliens and diplomats, watching history happen. His senior colleague, Park Soo-ah, walked up beside him. She was a calm woman in her 40s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Stop looking like a tourist," she said quietly. "You represent Earth now." "Sorry," Tae-woo said, but he could not stop his eyes from moving around the room. There were tall blue beings with 4 arms, short creatures covered in soft fur, beings made of what looked like living crystal. Each species sat at their own tables, talking, laughing, making deals. The Galactic Unity Summit happened once every 5 years. Representatives from 47 species came together to discuss trade, peace, and the future of the galaxy. Earth had only joined the galactic community 15 years ago. Humans were still the new species, still learning, still trying to prove they belonged. "Go find your seat," Sua said. "The dinner will start soon." Tae-woo nodded and began walking through the hall. His seat was at one of the smaller tables near the back. Earth's delegation was not important enough for the center tables yet. That was fine with him. He liked watching from the edges. As he walked, he noticed something strange. Every table in the hall was filling up quickly. Delegates rushed to sit with allies or potential partners. The room buzzed with conversation and the sound of different languages mixing together. But one table remained empty. It was not a small table. It was large enough for 12 guests. It sat near the western wall, decorated with purple flowers that Tae-woo did not recognize. The chairs were made of dark wood carved with beautiful patterns. It should have been a popular table, but no one sat there. No one even walked close to it, except for one person. She sat at the head of the table, completely alone. She was Etherian. Tae-woo recognized the species from his studies. Etherians looked similar to humans, but with skin that glowed faintly like moonlight. They were tall and graceful, known throughout the galaxy for their beauty and their strict culture. This woman was young, perhaps his age in human years. She wore a dress of deep purple silk that flowed around her like water. Her hair was silver white, falling past her shoulders. She sat perfectly straight, her hands folded on the table, her face showing no emotion. But Tae-woo noticed her eyes. One eye was silver, bright like a star. The other was gold, warm like sunlight. They were beautiful eyes, but they did not match. He also saw a thin scar on her left cheek. It was small, almost hidden, running from below her eye to her jaw. Around the table, at a respectful distance, stood 4 attendants in matching uniforms. They did not sit. They did not speak to her. They simply stood and watched. Tae-woo stopped walking. He watched as delegates from other species glanced at the table, whispered to each other, and moved away quickly. He saw an Etherian diplomat approach a group of furry Veloci ambassadors. The Veloci pointed at the empty table with curiosity. "That is Princess Velera," the Etherian diplomat said. His voice was loud enough for Tae-woo to hear. "Third daughter of Emperor Calith." "Why does she sit alone?" a Veloci asked. The Etherian's face showed disgust. "She bears the mark of incompletion. Her eyes do not match. Her face is scarred. Among our people, such flaws are signs of chaos. To sit with her is to invite misfortune. She should not even be here. But the Emperor cannot leave her behind. It would raise questions." The Veloci made a sound of understanding and moved away from the table, choosing seats elsewhere. Tae-woo felt something twist in his chest. He looked at the princess again. She had not moved. Her face was still calm, still empty. But he noticed her hands beneath the table. Her fingers were pressed tightly together. Her knuckles were pale. He knew that gesture. He had made it himself many times. It was the gesture of someone trying very hard not to show how much they were hurting. Tae-woo remembered his childhood, the orphanage in Busan. the way other children formed groups and left him outside, the way families came to adopt and always chose someone else. He remembered sitting alone at lunch tables, pretending he liked being alone, pressing his hands together under the table so no one would see them shake. He looked at his assigned seat near the back of the hall. He looked at the princess sitting alone. Then he started walking. He did not walk to his assigned seat. He walked straight toward the empty table. He felt eyes turning to watch him. He heard whispers starting behind him. He did not care. The attendants stepped forward as he approached, their faces alarmed. "Human," one said coldly. "This table is reserved for—" "I know," Taewoo said. He walked past them and pulled out a chair across from the princess. For the first time, her expression changed. Her strange, beautiful eyes widened. Her lips parted in surprise. Taewoo sat down. The hall went quiet. Not completely silent, but the conversations nearby stopped. Heads turned. Even delegates from distant tables looked over to see what was happening. Taewoo ignored all of them. He looked at the princess and smiled. "Is this seat taken?" he asked. She stared at him. Several seconds passed. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft and careful, like she was testing each word before letting it out. "Do you know who I am?" "Princess Valira of the Etherian Empire," Taewoo said. "Third daughter of Emperor Kaleth." I read the guest list. "Do you know what I am?" Taewoo tilted his head. "A person eating dinner alone, unless you tell me to leave." Something flickered in her eyes. He could not name the emotion. It came and went too quickly. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human," she said. Taewoo laughed softly. "My teachers always said I was both." He placed his hands on the table where she could see them, open, relaxed, unthreatening. "My name is Kim Taewoo. I work with the Earth delegation, and I really hate eating alone. Do you mind if I stay?" The princess looked at him for a long moment. Her silver and gold eyes searched his face, looking for lies, for tricks, for hidden motives. She found none. Slowly, very slowly, the tension in her shoulders eased. Just a little. "You may stay," she said, "but do not say I did not warn you." Taewoo smiled and picked up the menu on the table. "So," he said, as if nothing unusual had happened, "what's good here?" And for the first time in 10 years, Princess Valira felt someone look at her and see something other than a flaw. The whispers spread through the grand hall like fire through dry grass. Delegates from every species watched the human sitting with the flawed princess. Some looked confused, some looked disgusted, a few looked curious. Taewoo pretended not to notice any of them. He studied the menu carefully, though most of the dishes were things he had never heard of. The words were in the common galactic language, but that did not help him understand what roasted star bloom with essence of morningtide actually meant. "The third option is safe for humans," Princess Valira said. Her voice was quiet, almost hesitant. "It is similar to what you call vegetables and grain." "Thank you," Taewoo said with a genuine smile. "I was worried I might accidentally order something that would make my tongue fall off." Valera blinked. "Does that happen to humans?" "No, no," Taewoo laughed. "It's just a joke. A way of saying I was worried." "Ah," she seemed to think about this. "Etherians do not joke often. It is considered undignified." "That sounds exhausting," Taewoo said honestly. Valira's lips twitched. It was not quite a smile, but it was close. "It is," she admitted. A serving machine floated to their table, and they placed their orders. Around them, the normal noise of the hall slowly returned. People went back to their own conversations, though Taewoo noticed that many still glanced at their table from time to time. "You have not asked," Valera said suddenly. "Asked what?" "About my eyes, my scar, why I sit alone." She looked at him with something like suspicion. "Everyone asks, or they simply stare and say nothing, which is worse." Taewoo shrugged. "I figured if you wanted to tell me, you would. And if you don't want to, that's fine too. I didn't sit here to interview you." "Then why did you sit here?" It was a real question. Taewoo could hear the confusion in her voice. She truly did not understand why anyone would choose to be near her. "Because you were alone," he said simply, "and the food probably tastes the same at every table. So why not this one?" Valera stared at him for a long moment. Then she shook her head slowly. "You are a very strange human, Kim Taewoo." "I've been told that before," he admitted. Their food arrived. Taewoo was relieved to find that his dish really did look like vegetables and grain. It was purple instead of green, and it glowed slightly, but at least it was recognizable. He took a careful bite. "This is actually delicious," he said with surprise. "Did you expect poison?" "I expected something weird. Not everything alien is as friendly as you." Valera made a small sound. It took Taewoo a moment to realize it was a laugh. It was quiet and short, like she had surprised herself by making it. Her hand flew to her mouth as if to catch the sound and push it back in. "I apologize," she said quickly. "That was inappropriate." "Why?" Taewoo asked. "Laughing isn't inappropriate. It means you're happy, or at least amused. That's a good thing. Among my people, showing emotion in public is a sign of weakness," Valera said. Her voice was flat again, controlled. "Especially for someone like me. I must be perfect in behavior since I cannot be perfect in appearance." Taewoo frowned. He put down his fork and leaned forward slightly. "That sounds like a terrible way to live." "It is the only way I know." They ate in silence for a few minutes. Taewoo watched her from the corner of his eye. She ate with perfect manners, each movement precise and graceful. But he noticed that her shoulders were tense. Her jaw was tight. She was working so hard to seem calm that it must have been exhausting. "Can I show you something?" Taewoo asked. Valera looked at him with suspicion again. "What?" He held out his hand, palm up. "On Earth, we have a greeting. When two people meet, they hold hands like this and shake them up and down. It's called a handshake." Valera looked at his hand but did not move. "Why do you do this?" "It started a long time ago, as a way to show that you weren't holding a weapon. You offer your open hand to prove you mean no harm. Now it's just a way to say hello, or to make a promise, or to show that you see someone as an equal." "An equal," Valera repeated softly. She looked at his hand for a long time. Then slowly she reached out and placed her hand in his. Her skin was cool and smooth. Up close, he could see that it truly did glow faintly, like moonlight was trapped just beneath the surface. Her fingers were long and delicate. Taewoo gently shook her hand up and down. "Nice to meet you, Princess Valera." "Nice to meet you, Kim Taewoo," she replied. Her voice was still careful, but something in her eyes had changed. The suspicion was fading, replaced by something warmer. She did not let go of his hand right away. "Tell me about Earth," she said. "I have read files about your planet, but files are cold things. They do not show what a place truly is." So Taewoo talked. He told her about the oceans, so vast that they seemed to go on forever. He told her about mountains that touched the clouds and deserts where nothing grew. He told her about his home city of Busan, where the sea met the land and the air always smelled of salt. He told her about rain, and she was fascinated. Etheria had weather controlled by machines. The idea of water falling freely from the sky, unpredictable and wild, seemed magical to her. "And people just walk in it?" she asked. "Sometimes we dance in it," Taewoo said with a grin. "When I was young, the other kids at the orphanage and I would run outside whenever it rained. We would splash in puddles until our clothes were soaked." "Orphanage," Valera repeated. "This word is in my translator, but I am not certain of its meaning." Taewoo's smile faded a little, but he did not look away. "It's a place where children live when they don't have parents. My parents died when I was very young. I grew up in an orphanage until I was old enough to take care of myself." Valera's expression shifted. For a moment, the mask cracked, and he saw real emotion on her face. It looked like sadness. It looked like recognition. "You grew up alone," she said quietly. "Sometimes," Taewoo admitted. "But I learned that being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. And I learned that family doesn't have to be the people who share your blood. It can be the people who choose to stand beside you." Valera was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "No one has chosen to stand beside me in a very long time." "Well," Taewoo said, picking up his fork again, "now someone has, at least for tonight." They continued eating. Taewoo asked her about Etherian art, and she told him about paintings made with light instead of paint. He asked about music, and she hummed a few notes of a song her nurse used to sing to her before her father had forbidden such softness. When the meal ended and delegates began to leave, Tae-woo stood and bowed slightly in the Etherean fashion. He had studied their customs. "Thank you for letting me share your table," he said. Valira stood as well. For a moment she seemed unsure what to say. Then she bowed back, deeper than was necessary for someone of her rank. "Thank you," she said, "for seeing me." Tae-woo did not understand what she meant. Not yet. But he smiled and walked away, feeling the weight of many eyes following him. Park Sua was waiting for him near the exit. Her face was a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Do you know what you just did?" she asked. "I had dinner," Tae-woo said. "You had dinner with the most avoided person in this entire station. By tomorrow, everyone will know your name." Tae-woo looked back at the table. Valira was leaving through a side door, her attendants following at their careful distance. Just before she disappeared, she glanced back and met his eyes. She almost smiled. "Good," Tae-woo said. "Maybe that will give her someone to talk to." 3 days passed after the dinner. The summit continued with meetings and negotiations that filled the hours from morning until night. Tae-woo spent most of his time translating documents and running messages between senior diplomats. It was boring work, but important. But during the breaks between sessions, he found himself looking for silver-white hair and mismatched eyes. On the 4th day, he found her. Valira was standing alone in the station's botanical garden. It was a huge room filled with plants from 100 different worlds. Some glowed in the dim light. Others moved slowly, reaching toward visitors like curious children. The air was thick with the smell of flowers and growing things. She stood before a wall of climbing vines covered in small blue flowers. Her hands were clasped behind her back, and she was staring at the flowers without really seeing them. "They're beautiful," Tae-woo said as he walked up beside her. Valira did not jump or look surprised. Perhaps she had heard him coming. Perhaps she simply did not react to surprises anymore. "They are from a planet called Varus," she said. "The flowers only bloom in complete darkness. When light touches them, they close." "That's sad," Tae-woo said. "They can only be beautiful when no one can see them." "Yes," Valira's voice was soft. "I find them relatable." They stood in silence for a moment. Around them, other visitors walked through the garden, but no one came near them. Word had spread quickly. The human who sat with the flawed princess was either very brave or very foolish. Most people decided not to find out which. "I was hoping I would see you again," Tae-woo admitted. "I wanted to make sure you were okay." "Why would I not be okay?" "I don't know. That's why I wanted to check." Valira finally turned to look at him. Her silver and gold eyes studied his face with the same careful attention she had shown at dinner. She was looking for lies again, looking for hidden purposes. "You truly mean that?" she said. It was not a question. "I truly do." She turned back to the flowers. "Walk with me," she said, "if you have time." They walked slowly through the garden. Valira pointed out different plants and explained where they came from. She knew a lot about botany, it turned out. It was one of the few subjects she had been allowed to study freely, since flowers could not be offended by her presence. As they walked, she began to talk about other things. Her voice was quiet, almost like she was speaking to herself, and Tae-woo just happened to be listening. "Among the Etherean people, physical perfection is sacred," she said. "We believe that the body reflects the soul. A symmetrical face means a balanced spirit. Clear skin means a pure heart. To be born with flaws is to be marked by chaos. It means your soul is broken." "That's not true," Tae-woo said immediately. "I know that now, but I did not know it when I was young." Valira's voice carried old pain. "I was born with these eyes. My mother screamed when she saw me. She thought I was cursed. She died a year later, and my father always believed it was because of the shame I brought her." Tae-woo felt anger rise in his chest. He pushed it down. This was not the time for anger. "When I was 7, I was playing in the palace gardens," Valira continued. "I fell from a tree and cut my face on a branch. The healers could have fixed the scar completely. The technology exists, but my father forbade it. He said the scar was a reminder, a mark of my carelessness and imperfection." "He sounds like a cruel man," Tae-woo said carefully. "He is the emperor. He does what he believes is necessary." Valira's voice was flat, but Tae-woo could hear the pain beneath the words. I have two older siblings. They are perfect in every way. Beautiful, intelligent, charming. They will fight for the throne someday. I will never be considered. I am not even allowed to sit at the same table as them during formal occasions. But you're still a princess, Taewoo said. You're still his daughter. I am a stain on his legacy. The only reason I am alive is because killing royal blood is forbidden by ancient law. So instead, he keeps me hidden. I am brought to events like this summit only because leaving me behind would raise questions. But I am not allowed to speak to other delegations. I am not allowed to represent my people. I sit alone, and everyone pretends I do not exist. They had stopped walking. They stood beside a small pond filled with silver fish that left trails of light as they swam. I'm sorry, Taewoo said. The words felt weak, but he meant them with all his heart. Why are you sorry? You did nothing wrong. I'm sorry that you had to live like that. I'm sorry that the people who should have loved you chose to hurt you instead. He took a breath. And I'm sorry that no one told you earlier that they were wrong. Valira looked at him. Her eyes were shining, but no tears fell. She had probably learned long ago not to cry. On Earth, Taewoo said, we have something called kintsugi. It's an old Japanese art form. When a piece of pottery breaks, instead of throwing it away, artists repair it with gold. The cracks become part of the design. The broken places become the most beautiful parts. He reached out and very gently touched his own cheek, in the same place where Valira's scar ran along her face. In kintsugi, damage is not something to hide. It's something to celebrate. It shows that the object has a history, that it has survived, that it is stronger for having been broken. Valira was very still. She barely seemed to breathe. I am not pottery, she said softly. No, you're a person, and people are even more valuable than pottery. Taewoo smiled gently. Your eyes are beautiful because they're yours. Your scar is part of your story. The things that make you different don't make you less. They make you more. For a long moment, Valira said nothing. Then she turned away quickly and faced the pond. Her shoulders shook once, then stilled. You humans are very strange, she said. Her voice was thick. We get that a lot. She laughed. It was a broken sound, half laugh and half sob. But it was real. It was honest. I have spent 20 years believing I was worth nothing, she said. One human speaks to me for a few hours and tells me everything I was taught is wrong. Well, Taewoo said, sometimes it takes an outsider to see what people inside can't see, or won't see. Valera finally turned back to face him. Her eyes were red, but she held herself straight. She looked at him with an expression he could not quite name. It was gratitude. It was wonder. It was something else that was just beginning to grow. Why do you care? She asked. You gain nothing from being kind to me. Your delegation gains nothing. Your planet gains nothing. Being seen with me brings only trouble. So why? Taewoo thought about the question. He thought about the orphanage, about sitting alone at tables, about the feeling of being invisible in a room full of people. Because I know what it's like, he said, to feel like you don't belong, to feel like something is wrong with you, even when you don't know what it is. I spent my whole childhood feeling that way. He paused. And then one day, a teacher sat down next to me and talked to me like I was a person. Not a problem, not a burden, just a person. It changed everything. So you were paying forward a kindness, Valera said. I guess so. But it's also because, he struggled to find the right words, because you deserve it, because everyone deserves to have someone see them. And I see you, Valira. I see you. The words hung in the air between them. Simple words. True words. Valira stepped forward. She reached out and took his hand in the human way, the way he had shown her at dinner. Thank you, she said. Thank you for seeing me. They stood there in the garden, hand in hand, while silver fish swam in circles and flowers bloomed in the darkness. The days that followed were some of the happiest Valira had ever known. She and Taewoo met whenever their schedules allowed. They walked through the gardens together. They ate meals at the same corner table that had once been her prison of loneliness. They talked for hours about their worlds, their dreams, their fears. For the first time in her life, Valira had a friend, but not everyone was pleased. Park Sua found Tai Wu in the Earth delegation's office on the 8th day of the summit. Her face was serious as she closed the door behind her. "We need to talk," she said. Tai Wu looked up from his work. He had been translating a trade agreement, but the words blurred together when he saw Sua's expression. "What's wrong?" Sua sat down across from him. She folded her hands on the desk and took a deep breath. "The Etherean delegation has lodged a formal complaint with the Summit Council," she said. "About you." Tai-Wu's stomach dropped. "About me? What did I do?" "You've been spending time with Princess Valira. The Etherians consider this inappropriate. They say you are interfering with their internal affairs." "Interfering?" Tai-Wu's voice rose with disbelief. "I'm eating meals with her. I'm talking to her. How is that interfering? To you and me, it's just friendship. But to the Etherians, it's much more complicated." Sua's voice was patient but firm. "Princess Valira is what they call marked. She is supposed to be isolated. By publicly associating with her, you're making a statement. You're telling the galaxy that Earth rejects their customs." "Maybe Earth should reject their customs," Tai-Wu said angrily. "Their customs are cruel. They treat her like garbage because her eyes don't match. That's insane." "I don't disagree with you," Sua said. "But we are guests in this community. Earth is still new. We need allies, not enemies. The Etherian Empire is one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. We cannot afford to offend them. So I should just stop talking to her? Pretend she doesn't exist like everyone else does?" "I'm not telling you to do anything." Sua's eyes softened. "I'm telling you that there may be consequences. Other species are watching. Some of them are impressed by your courage, but others think you are naive. They think Earth does not understand how things work out here." Tai-Wu was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Valira's smile when they walked through the gardens. He thought about the sound of her laugh, still rare but becoming more frequent. He thought about the way she had looked at him with something like hope. "I can't abandon her," he said finally. "I won't." Sua nodded slowly. "I thought you would say that." She stood up and put a hand on his shoulder. "Just be careful, Tai-Wu. The universe is bigger and more complicated than we sometimes remember." She left. Tai-Wu sat alone in the office, staring at his tablet without seeing it. That evening he met Valira as usual in the garden. But something was different. Her face was pale, even more than usual. Her hands were shaking slightly. "What happened?" Tai-Wu asked immediately. Valira did not answer right away. She walked to their usual spot by the silver fish pond and stared into the water. "My father summoned me," she said at last. "He knows about us, about our friendship. And he is furious." Valira's voice was hollow. "He says I am embarrassing our family. He says the entire summit is talking about how a human took pity on the broken princess. He says I have made the Etherian Empire look weak." Tai-Wu felt anger burning in his chest. "You haven't done anything wrong. Neither of us has. That does not matter to him. What matters is appearance. What matters is reputation." Valira finally turned to face him. Her eyes were red, but she had not cried. She never cried in front of others. "He has forbidden me from speaking to you again." The words hit Tai-Wu like a physical blow. "What?" "He gave me a direct order. As my emperor and my father, I am bound to obey him." Her voice cracked slightly. "If I disobey, there will be consequences." "What kind of consequences?" Valira did not answer, but Tai-Wu could see the fear in her eyes. Whatever the consequences were, they were terrible. "Then we'll be careful," Tai-Wu said. "We'll meet in secret." "We'll—" "No!" Valira shook her head firmly. "I will not hide like a criminal. I will not be ashamed of the one good thing that has happened to me." She took a deep breath. "Tai-Wu, I am going to disobey my father." "Valira, you have given me something precious. You have shown me that I have worth, that my life can be more than shame and isolation." Her voice grew stronger. "I have spent 20 years doing exactly what my father wanted. I have been quiet. I have been invisible. I have accepted every cruelty because I believed I deserved it. But I do not deserve it. You helped me see that." Tai-Wu felt his heart swell with something that was both joy and fear. Joy because she was standing up for herself. Fear because he knew there would be a price. "What will you do?" he asked. I will continue to see you. I will continue to walk in public with my head held high. And when my father rages, I will tell him what I should have said years ago. Valera's mismatched eyes blaze with determination. I will tell him that I am not broken. I will tell him that his shame is not my shame. I will tell him that I refuse to disappear. He won't accept that, Taewoo said quietly. No, he won't. Valera's determination flickered for just a moment, and he saw the scared young woman beneath the brave words. But some things are worth fighting for, even if you lose. Taewoo stepped forward and took her hands in his. Her fingers were cold and trembling. You won't fight alone, he said. Whatever happens, I'm with you. You barely know me. We've only spent a few days together. Sometimes a few days is enough to know what matters. Taewoo squeezed her hands gently. Besides, I told you at dinner that I hate eating alone. Can't back out now. Valera laughed despite herself. It was a small, broken sound, but it was real. You are a fool, Kim Taewoo. The best kind of fool, he agreed. They stood together as the artificial lights of the station dimmed to simulate evening. The silverfish swam in lazy circles. The dark flowers opened their petals. Neither of them knew what tomorrow would bring, but for this moment at least, they were not alone. Far away in the royal quarters of the Etherian delegation, Emperor Calith received a message from his daughter. She was refusing his command. She was choosing a human over her own family. The Emperor's face grew cold as ice. If his daughter wanted to defy him, then she would learn the true cost of rebellion. He summoned his advisors and spoke a single word. The right. The advisors went pale, but they bowed and hurried to obey. Something old and terrible was about to be awakened. The summons came at dawn. Valera and Taewoo were called to the great hall of the summit. When they arrived, they found it filled with delegates from every species. The hall was silent. Thousands of eyes watched as they walked to the center of the room. Emperor Calith stood on a raised platform at the far end. He wore robes of black and silver, and his face was as cold as a winter night. Behind him stood his two perfect children, looking at Valera with disgust. Princess Valera of House Calith, the Emperor said. His voice echoed through the hall. You have defied my direct command. You have shamed our family before the entire galaxy. Do you deny this? Valera lifted her chin. Her voice did not shake. I do not deny it, Father. I denied your command because your command was unjust. Whispers rippled through the crowd. No one spoke to the Emperor this way. Certainly not his own daughter. Unjust? The Emperor's eyes narrowed. I am your Emperor. My word is law. Your word has kept me in chains for 20 years. Valera's voice grew stronger. You have told me that I am worthless. You have hidden me from the world. You have treated me as a stain to be cleaned rather than a daughter to be loved. And I have accepted it because I did not know any better. She gestured to Taewoo, who stood beside her. This human showed me kindness. He sat with me when everyone else looked away. He saw me as a person, not a flaw. Because of him, I finally understand that I deserve better. The Emperor's face twisted with rage. You would choose an alien over your own blood? I would choose anyone who treats me with dignity over those who treat me with contempt. The hall erupted in murmurs. Delegates exchanged shocked glances. This was unprecedented. A princess openly defying her emperor before the entire galactic community. The Emperor raised his hand for silence. When he spoke again, his voice was like ice. Very well, daughter. If you wish to claim honor that you have not earned, then the old laws provide a way. He smiled, and there was no warmth in it. I invoke the right of validation. The Etherians in the crowd gasped. Several of them looked horrified. Even the delegates from other species seemed to recognize the gravity of those words. Valera's face went pale. Father, no. The right of validation, the Emperor continued, is an ancient custom. When a marked individual claims that they deserve honor and respect, they may prove it through a champion. That champion must face the trial of echoes. If they succeed, the marked individual is restored to full standing. If they fail, he let the sentence hang in the air. If they fail, he finished, the marked individual is exiled forever, cast out from their people, stripped of name and rank. They become nothing. Taewoo stepped forward. What is the trial of echoes? An Etherian official near the platform answered. His voice was grave. The Trial of Echoes is a mental labyrinth. It is created by ancient technology that has existed since the founding of our civilization. When a person enters the labyrinth, they face their own mind, their deepest fears, their worst memories, their greatest failures. And what happens in this labyrinth? Tewu pressed. The labyrinth breaks them, the official said simply. It forces them to relive their pain over and over until their mind shatters. No off-worlder has ever survived it. Few Etherians have survived it. It was designed to be impossible. Valera grabbed Tewu's arm. No champion will step forward for me. No Etherian will risk themselves for someone marked. My father knows this. He is condemning me to exile. Then I'll be your champion, Tewu said. The hall went completely silent. Even the Emperor looked surprised. Tewu, no. Valera's voice was desperate. You don't understand what you're saying. The trial destroys people. It will kill you. You don't know that. I do know that. Tears were forming in her eyes now. She could no longer hold them back. The last person to attempt the trial was a decorated Etherian warrior. He had fought in 3 wars. He had faced death 100 times. The trial broke him in less than an hour. He never spoke again. Tewu looked at her. Her silver and gold eyes were shining with tears. Her hands gripped his arm so tightly it hurt. I can't let you do this, she whispered. You could die. You probably will die. All because you sat at my table for dinner. Tewu gently took her hands in his. Valera, listen to me. You sat alone for 20 years. 20 years of being told you were worthless. 20 years of being treated like garbage. You finally stood up for yourself. You finally said enough. He squeezed her hands. I'm not going to let that courage be punished. But, no buts. Tewu smiled at her. It was a calm smile even though his heart was pounding. You asked me once why I sat with you. I told you it was because I knew what it was like to be alone. But that's only part of the truth. He took a breath. The whole truth is that I saw someone who had been hurt by the universe, and I wanted to show them that the universe could also be kind. I still want that, and if I have to walk through a nightmare to prove it, then that's what I'll do. Valera stared at him. Tears rolled down her cheeks, catching the light. You are a fool, she said. The best kind of fool, he replied. He turned to face the Emperor. The old man was watching them with an expression of cold amusement. He clearly believed the human would fail. He was looking forward to watching it happen. I accept the role of champion, Tewu said loudly. I will face the trial of echoes on behalf of Princess Valera. The Emperor smiled his cold smile. Very well. The trial will take place tomorrow at midday. Prepare yourself, human. You will need every moment. He turned and swept out of the hall. His perfect children followed without a backward glance at their sister. The crowd began to disperse, buzzing with conversation. Delegates from a dozen species approached Tewu, some to wish him luck, others to call him mad. The Earth delegation surrounded him with worried faces. Park Sua pushed through the crowd. Her face was pale. What have you done? She asked. What I had to do, Tewu replied. He looked across the hall. Valera stood alone, her attendants keeping their usual distance. She was watching him with an expression of wonder and fear. He walked to her and took her hand one more time. Tomorrow, he said, I'm going to win. And when I do, no one will ever tell you that you're not good enough again. You don't know what's waiting for you in that labyrinth, she whispered. Tewu thought about his past, the orphanage, the loneliness, the years of feeling like nothing. He had lived with those ghosts his entire life. Actually, he said quietly, I think I do. He walked away to prepare for the trial. Behind him, Valera watched him go with tears still wet on her cheeks. She had never believed in miracles. Her life had taught her that the universe was cold and uncaring. But as she watched the human who had chosen to fight for her, she began to wonder if she had been wrong. The Chamber of Echoes was deep in the oldest part of the space station. It had been built by the Etherians centuries ago, when they first brought their traditions to the stars. The walls were made of black stone that seemed to drink the light. In the center of the room stood an archway made of metal so ancient it had turned green with age. Tewu stood before the archway. He wore simple clothes, white shirt, dark pants. No weapons were allowed, no tools, nothing but himself. The chamber was filled with witnesses. Delegates from every species had come to watch. Emperor Calith sat on a raised throne, his face showing no emotion. Beside him, his perfect son and daughter watched with cold interest. Velera stood near the front of the crowd. Her face was pale. Her hands were clasped together so tightly her knuckles had gone white. An ancient Etherian priest approached the archway. He spoke in a voice that creaked like old wood. The trial of echoes tests the spirit. When you pass through this gate, you will enter a world made from your own mind. You will face your memories, your fears, your regrets, the echoes of everything that has ever hurt you. The priest looked at Tewu with something that might have been pity. To survive, you must reach the center of the labyrinth, but the path is not physical, it is emotional. The labyrinth feeds on pain. It takes your worst moments and makes them real. Most who enter are consumed by their own darkness. How do I win? Tewu asked. You must accept your echoes without being destroyed by them. You must face your pain and walk through it. Not around it, through it. The priest shook his head slowly. In all the centuries this trial has existed, only 17 beings have ever succeeded. None of them were human. Then I'll be the first. The priest stepped aside. The archway began to glow with a pale silver light. Tewu looked back at the crowd. He found Valira's eyes and held them. I'll see you soon, he said. Then he stepped through the archway. The world disappeared. Tewu found himself standing in a gray void. There was no floor beneath his feet, yet he did not fall. There were no walls around him, yet he could not move in any direction. The silence was absolute and crushing. Then the echoes began. The gray void shifted. Color bled into the world. Tewu found himself standing in a familiar hallway. The walls were painted that specific shade of pale green that he remembered from his childhood. The smell of industrial cleaner filled his nose. The orphanage. He was back in the orphanage. A door opened beside him. A young boy walked out. The boy was maybe 7 years old. He had messy black hair and eyes that were too old for his face. Tewu recognized himself. The young Tewu walked down the hallway to a large room filled with tables. Other children sat together in groups, eating lunch and laughing. The young Tewu took his tray and looked for a place to sit. There were no empty seats at any of the tables with other children. They looked away when he approached. Some of them whispered to each other and giggled. The young Tewu walked to an empty table in the corner and sat down alone. Adult Tewu felt the memory like a knife in his chest. He remembered this day. He remembered every day like this. The loneliness had been a constant companion throughout his childhood. The scene shifted. Now he was older, maybe 12. He stood in the orphanage's main office. A man and woman sat across from him. They were visiting to adopt a child. Young Tewu sat perfectly straight. He smiled his best smile. He answered their questions politely and clearly. The couple smiled back. They seemed to like him. Then the orphanage director said something in a low voice. She showed them a file. The couple's smiles faded. They looked at Tewu differently now, with pity, with disappointment. I'm sorry, the woman said. We were hoping for someone more normal. They left. Young Tewu watched them go with eyes that had learned not to cry. Adult Tewu felt the old wound tear open. The labyrinth was not just showing him memories. It was making him feel them again, fresh and raw, as if they were happening for the first time. You were not wanted, a voice echoed around him. It was his own voice, but twisted and cold. You were never wanted. No one chose you. No one loved you. That's not true, Tewu said. Isn't it? The scene shifted again. Now he saw himself at 16, being rejected by a group of classmates. At 19, eating alone in a university cafeteria. At 23, watching friends pair off and drift away. You have always been alone, the voice said. You will always be alone. You pretend to be brave, but inside you are still that little boy at the empty table, wondering why no one wants to sit with him. The memories came faster now. Every rejection, every lonely night, every time someone looked through him like he wasn't there. The labyrinth pulled them all out and forced him to experience them again. Tewu fell to his knees. The pain was overwhelming. It was not physical pain, but something deeper. It was the pain of a lifetime of not belonging. Give up, the voice whispered. Let go. There is peace in surrender. Just stop fighting and the pain will end. For a moment, Tae-woo wanted to give up. The temptation was strong. He could just close his eyes and let the darkness take him. It would be so easy. But then he thought of Valira. He thought of her sitting alone at that table in the banquet hall. He thought of her mismatched eyes and her careful smile. He thought of how she had laughed when he made a joke, surprised by her own happiness. He thought of how she had taken his hand and thanked him for seeing her. If he gave up now, she would be exiled. She would lose everything. She would spend the rest of her life believing that she was not worth fighting for. He could not let that happen. Tae-woo forced himself to stand. The memories still swirled around him. The young versions of himself still sat alone at empty tables, but now he looked at them differently. "You're right," he said to the voice. "I was alone. I was rejected. I spent years wondering what was wrong with me." He walked toward the nearest memory. It was himself at 7, sitting alone at lunch. "But you're missing something important." He knelt beside his younger self. The child looked up at him with eyes full of sadness. "I survived," Tae-woo said. "I made it through all of that pain. I didn't give up. I kept going. And eventually I found my place. I found people who cared about me. I found a purpose." He put his hand on the child's shoulder. The loneliness was real. The pain was real. But it didn't define me. It made me who I am. Someone who understands what it feels like to be invisible. Someone who can see the people that others overlook. The labyrinth shuddered. The voice screamed at him, but the words were unclear now, losing power. Tae-woo stood and faced the darkness. "My pain is part of me. My scars are part of my story. I don't have to fight them or deny them. I just have to keep walking forward." He began to walk. The memories still appeared around him. The rejections, the loneliness, the moments of despair. But now they were not attacks. They were just memories. Real, painful, but survivable. He walked through his childhood, through his teenage years, through every dark moment of his adult life, and with each step he accepted what had happened without letting it destroy him. The path appeared beneath his feet. It glowed with a soft golden light, leading forward through the darkness. Tae-woo followed it. After what felt like hours but might have been minutes, he reached the center of the labyrinth. It was a small room of white light. In the center stood an archway identical to the one he had entered through. He stepped through and found himself back in the Chamber of Echoes. The crowd stared at him in disbelief. The priest's mouth hung open. Even Emperor Kaleth showed a flicker of shock before his face went cold again. Tae-woo stood in the center of the chamber, breathing hard but alive. Whole. Unbroken. Valira broke through the crowd and ran to him. She threw her arms around him, crying openly now, not caring who saw. "You did it," she sobbed. "You actually did it." Tae-woo held her tightly. His body was exhausted and his mind was raw, but he was smiling. "I told you," he said. "I'll always come back." The announcement echoed through the Chamber of Echoes like thunder. The trial has been completed. The champion has survived. The ancient priest stepped forward. His face showed something that might have been awe. "According to the sacred laws of our ancestors, Princess Valira of House Kaleth is hereby restored to full standing. Her honor is proven. The mark of incompletion is lifted. No person may speak of her as flawed or unworthy again." The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates from dozens of species spoke all at once. Some were cheering, others were simply stunned. This had never happened before. A human had done the impossible. Emperor Kaleth sat frozen on his throne. His perfect face had cracked, showing the rage beneath. His plan had failed. The daughter he had tried to destroy had been saved by an alien, and there was nothing he could do about it. He stood abruptly and swept from the chamber without a word. His perfect children followed, their faces twisted with disbelief and anger. The crowd parted to let them pass. When the royal family was gone, the tension in the room broke like a wave. Delegates rushed forward to speak with Tae-woo. Representatives from species that had ignored Earth for years suddenly wanted to shake his hand. Questions flew at him from all directions. How did you survive the trial? What did you see in the labyrinth? Why did you risk your life for an Etherian? Park Sua pushed through the crowd and helped Tae-woo step back from the pressing bodies. Give him space, she commanded. He just went through something terrible. He needs rest. The crowd reluctantly moved back. Sua guided Taewoo and Valero out of the chamber and into a quiet corridor. I don't know whether to hug you or strangle you, Sua said to Taewoo. That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Can't it be both? Taewoo asked weakly. Sua laughed despite herself. Get some sleep, both of you. Tomorrow is going to be very interesting. She walked away, already speaking into her communicator, probably reporting to the senior diplomats. Taewoo and Valera stood alone in the corridor. The artificial lights of the station were dimming toward evening mode. Somewhere in the distance, they could hear the hum of machines and the murmur of voices. How do you feel? Taewoo asked. Valera considered the question. Strange. I have spent so long being told I am worthless. Now suddenly, the law says I am not. I am not sure how to feel. Laws can't change feelings overnight. That takes time. Taewoo leaned against the wall. His body was exhausted, but his mind was strangely clear. But at least now you have time. You have your whole life ahead of you. And no one can take that away. Valera moved closer to him. Her silver and gold eyes studied his face with an intensity he had never seen before. What you did in there, she said softly, facing your pain like that. I cannot imagine how difficult it was. Taewoo thought about the labyrinth, about seeing his younger self sit alone at those tables, about finally accepting the hurt instead of fighting it. It was hard, he admitted, but it was also freeing. I've carried those memories with me for so long, always trying to pretend they didn't hurt. Facing them honestly was painful, but afterward I felt lighter, like I'd put down a weight I'd been carrying my whole life. You are remarkable, Kim Tae-woo. I'm just me, he said, a guy from Busan who doesn't like eating alone. Valera laughed. It was a real laugh, full and warm. Nothing like the careful sounds she used to make. You are much more than that, she said. You are the first person who ever truly saw me. And now because of you, everyone will have to see me. I can never repay that. You don't have to repay anything. That's not how friendship works. Friendship? Valera tested the word. Yes, I suppose that is what we have, though it feels like something more. They stood together in the dimming light. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Some things did not need words. The days that followed were busy and strange. Word of what had happened spread quickly across the galaxy. The human who had survived the trial of echoes became famous overnight. Suddenly, every species wanted to learn more about Earth. If humans could produce someone with that kind of courage and compassion, perhaps they were worth knowing after all. Earth's diplomatic status changed dramatically. Invitations poured in from planets that had ignored humanity for years. Trade agreements that had been stuck in negotiation for months suddenly moved forward. But the biggest change was in Valera herself. Without her father's shadow hanging over her, she seemed to grow taller. She began speaking at summit meetings, offering thoughtful ideas that impressed even the most skeptical delegates. She walked through the station with her head held high, no longer trying to be invisible. Her attendants, freed from the Emperor's strict orders, began talking to her like a person instead of a duty. One of them, an older woman who had served Valera since childhood, actually smiled at her one day. It was the first genuine smile the princess had received from her own people in years. Emperor Caliph left the station early, claiming urgent business at home. Everyone knew he was running from his humiliation. His perfect children went with him, refusing to look at their sister as they departed. Valera watched them go without sadness. That part of her life was over. She was ready to begin something new. On the last night of the summit, Tae-woo found Valera on the observation deck. The entire wall was made of transparent material, showing the vast darkness of space and the countless stars within it. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, gazing out at the universe. I spoke with the Summit Council today, she said without turning around. They have offered me a position as an ambassador at large. I would travel between worlds, helping to build bridges between species. That's wonderful, Tae-woo said. You would be perfect for that. I accepted. Valera finally turned to face him. But I told them I had one condition. I want to work closely with Earth's delegation, specifically with a certain junior translator. Tae-woo felt his heart lift. Is that so? It is. Valera walked closer to him. You changed my life, Taewoo. You showed me that I deserve more than I was given. I want to spend my time with someone who sees me as I truly am. Not as a flaw, not as a princess, just as Valira. I'd like that, Taewoo said. I'd like that a lot. They stood side by side looking out at the stars. The universe stretched before them, vast and full of possibilities. Among my people, Valira said softly, I will always be the princess with mismatched eyes, the one who was marked from birth. That story will never completely go away. Maybe not, Taewoo agreed. But now there's a second story. The story of how you stood up to an empire and won. The story of how you found your voice. He smiled at her. That's a pretty good story, too. It is. Valera reached out and took his hand in the human way, their fingers intertwined. And it's not over yet. They watched the stars together. Behind them, the lights of the station glowed warm and bright. Ahead of them lay an entire galaxy waiting to be explored. Taewoo thought about how it all started. A seat at an empty table. A simple act of kindness. Who could have known it would lead to this? Valira, he said, can I ask you something? Anything. That first night, when I sat at your table, what did you think? Honestly? Valira was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft with memory. I thought you were making a mistake. I thought you would realize who I was and find an excuse to leave. I thought, she paused. I thought it would hurt worse than being ignored. To have hope and then have it taken away. And now? She turned to look at him. Her silver and gold eyes reflected the starlight. Her face, scar and all, was beautiful in the gentle light. Now I think that sitting at my table was the bravest thing anyone has ever done for me. Braver even than the trial. Why? Because the trial tested your courage against your own pain. But sitting with me tested your courage against the judgment of the entire galaxy. And you did it without hesitation. Without expecting anything in return. You just saw someone alone and decided to be kind. She squeezed his hand. That kind of courage is rare, Kim Taewoo, among any species. Taewoo felt warmth spreading through his chest. I just did what felt right. I know, Valera said. That's what makes it special. They stood together in comfortable silence. The universe spun on around them, full of challenges and adventures yet to come. But for now, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Two people from different worlds, both once alone, both now found. The future was uncertain, as futures always are. But whatever came next, they would face it together, and that was more than enough.